500 years ago, humanity lost its home in betrayal. Today, they languish in a false paradise. Elena stood on the edge of a tall building, gazing at the city beneath her with loneliness and determination in her eyes. Her past is intertwined with her future, the power of time dissipating in her hands. An uprising that would decide her fate was about to break out, and the flames of betrayal and revenge would be ignited once again. In the vibrant metropolis of Heather City, the year 2510 ended with a stunning sunset, casting a warm light on its tall buildings. Elena leaned against the railing on the 30th floor of a towering glass structure, the wind whipping through her hair as she gazed at the bustling streets below. Hovercars zoomed past, and bright ads illuminated the night. Yet, despite the vibrant city, she felt an overwhelming loneliness. 500 years after the apocalypse, humanity thrived in a fake paradise. Betrayers had sought refuge with the aliens who orchestrated the world's demise, constructing a circular shelter that appeared idyllic but was merely a facade. The sunlight above pulsed with an energy controlled by a fire ability user, casting an artificial glow over the city. Outside, the once thriving blue planet lay in ruins, a bleak wasteland of decaying buildings and barren landscapes. Survival of the fittest ruled here. Only the strongest and cleverest would endure. Inside the fake paradise, life seemed ideal at the expense of humanity. Fearful of betrayal, the aliens injected humans with erroneous DNA, creating horrific hybrids. These once thriving beings have turned into terrible abominations, stripped of their freedom and forced to obey their alien masters. The blue planet, once teeming with life, became a breeding ground for these twisted beings. Elena looked out from the so-called paradise, knowing that outside the shelter's walls lay not only devastation but also the ghosts of her past, lost to a fate brought on by betrayal. She could still feel the battle of the year 2037, the adrenaline, the yells, and the dazzling flashes of power as humanity fought bravely against the invaders. Elena fought with her husband, Ethan, together with their trusted allies with confidence. Their overwhelming power pushed back the aliens. However, as the tide began to turn in their favor, betrayal struck like a dagger. Their allies turned against them, showing their allegiance to the aliens they hoped to overthrow. Ethan was suddenly caught in the crossfire, and an explosion of energy severed his connection for good. Grief seized her, and in that agonizing moment, an alien lunged at her, its claws tearing through flesh and bone and leaving her body ravaged with injuries. Elena's consciousness began to fade, and as despair overcame her mind, she clung to her once magnificent ability to manipulate time. She released a great force, bending the fabric of reality to send back her own consciousness to the past. However, her emotions were unstable, causing her to spiral uncontrollably through time. Yet, instead of returning to the defining moment of betrayal, she was unceremoniously hurled into the future, 500 years after the battle, her body battered and her spirit disoriented, like a leaf caught in a tempest. When she landed, she collapsed in a heap, buried in the northeast corner of a decaying shelter, the remnants of a once thriving stronghold. The scar on her face, left from the battle, appeared to throb with anguish, a physical embodiment of her internal turmoil. As she lay there, half-conscious, a pair of interested eyes gazed down at her, a half-breed, a mix of human and alien, who mistook her for one of its own due to her injuries and unkempt appearance, which saved her. 10 years had passed since the day she was transported into the future, costing her once mighty time manipulation, reduced to Tier 1 and could not be upgraded. Now, as Elena navigated the sleek, dirty corridors of her new reality of the year 2510, the memories of that battle haunted her like a shadow. She was now alone. What was left on her was the old necklace Ethan had given her on their wedding anniversary, a simple piece of metal engraved with their initials. This world was full of half-breeds roaming around with technology beyond her wildest dreams, but it lacked the warmth of human connection. Determined to honor Ethan's legacy, she sought out individuals who desired freedom. In the depths of this fake paradise, she discovered fellow survivors, people who had suffered a loss yet whose eyes mirrored the same haunting resolve she felt. They created a secret group called the Resurgence. Their aim was daring: to dismantle the regime that had allied with the very aliens that had devastated their world. Elena stepped up as their leader, channeling her pain into purpose. Using her limited time manipulation abilities, she scouted potential attack points. Though her power felt fragile, a flicker of what it once was, each successful mission ignited hope and trust in her among the survivors. Elena shared a vision one night while hiding in the dusty shadows of an old factory, a coordinated strike to bring down the traitorous leaders during the grand annual peace celebration. In this gaudy event, the elite celebrated their false security while the truth lay beneath them. The member was surprised and excited as Elena described her plan for the attack. A large, makeshift map sprawled across a metal table, marked with red circles and hurried handwriting. Here, she pointed to a central location on the map, the grand plaza where the celebration would occur. This is where the elite will gather. It is carefully guarded, but it will also be the focus of the guards' attention. Our best chance is to create chaos around the perimeter. Marcus, a tall man with a conspicuous scar, leaned close to the map. If we place one explosive at the east entrance and another at the west, we can divert the guards. That'll give us time to reach the VIP area. Exactly. Elena nodded, her fingers outlining the paths they may go. We'll utilize the tunnels beneath the square to make a hasty getaway. They won't see it coming. Lila, a technomancer ability, chimed in. Leader, I can hack the surveillance camera around this area. Creating a loop would greatly boost our success, and this will give us a few minutes to act while the half-breeds and VIPs were figuring out what's happening. Elena agreed with Lila's initiative. That would be a good idea, she said, adding, we need to plant explosives at 3 key points. The east entrance, the west entrance, and the power generator here, indicating the generator's location with a large red X. We must ensure that all explosions occur simultaneously. This will definitely amplify the chaos and maximize the impact, Marcus continued. Everyone agreed. Elena smiled as she observed everyone's enthusiasm. She looked at each member and said, so, we can synchronize our watches. If the signal is not available, we will use the timers on our watches to press the triggers. If it's available, I'll use a trigger to detonate the device at the same time as we get into position. The room was filled with discussion, as everyone was willing to add some suggestions. As they were about to finish the plan, Elena spoke with a serious tone and a determined voice. We will drag this betrayal to hell, Elena declared. We will not go quietly, we will show the betrayers the pain they have caused us, and we will reclaim the land that these aliens stole from us. Elena's speech intensified the atmosphere in the room, instilling a sense of defiance in them. If there is nothing else, the meeting is adjourned. Please leave with caution. The night before the uprising, Elena once again conducted a meeting to finalize the preparations, which every member contributed to creating a solid plan. Listen up, she exclaimed, capturing their attention. These guns are our last line of defense. They are more than just tools. They are symbols of our struggle for liberty. Each member was now armed with sleek, sophisticated firearms, gifts from the underground network that had successfully disrupted alien supply routes. This railgun fires plasma rounds, which create whirlwinds that pierce armor and confuse foes. Elena said, but remember, they won't replace our abilities. A heavy silence fell over the group, a reminder of the dwindling number of ability users, as alien injections had robbed many of their abilities, leaving them emotionless puppets under alien control or mere shadows of their former selves. Several members of their squad kept their abilities, albeit weakened. Lila, one of the last remaining technomancers, stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with power. Although the injections changed my DNA and harmed my abilities, I can still manipulate technology. I will do my best, leader, to create a diversion to ensure success, even if it means overusing my ability. Elena put a reassuring hand on Lila's shoulder. Those of us who survive may be fewer in number, but we are still powerful. Don't overthink things. We are fighting together, so don't let yourself bear the burden alone. Marcus chimed in calmly. The aliens may have stripped us of our abilities, but they've underestimated our will. We know their weaknesses. We've seen their methods firsthand. Elena nodded, pulling out a holographic projection of the alien stronghold. We'll use their technology against them. As discussed, we will first detonate the generator to cut off the electricity and then lure them out to the detonation points. I hope everyone will give their best. Got it. We will do our best, leader. Each member vowed, their eyes shining with determination. Elena looked at them, their face etched with resolve. 2. She used her final speech to encourage them even more. Tomorrow will be a day of reckoning, a climactic battle that will decide not only our fate but the fate of everyone we care about. So go home, regain your strength, and rest well. The battle of a lifetime awaits us, and we will rise together to face it. This meeting has ended. Banners waved in the wind, where laughter and music surrounded everyone, but Elena felt the heavy burden of her mission. As she confirmed her teammates' readiness, they formed 4 groups to gather important information. She gestured for them to split up. One group would join the performers, another would talk to the vendors, and the third would watch the entrances. Lila, you and I will head to the east side with Marcus. We need to check the generator and see if you can control the surveillance from there, Elena instructed as she checked the plan's map. Got it. I'll work on disabling the surveillance camera, Lila responded, her voice steady. Marcus added, I'll keep watch while you access the control panel. We don't want any surprises. As they approached the generator, the festival music faded into machine sounds. Elena felt excited. This is it, she said to Lila and Marcus. Access the control panel and disable all security cameras. Lila turned off the generator, making the party go dark. The music stopped, and the crowd at the event got angry. Elena's heart raced. This was the moment they had waited for. Everyone, get in position, she yelled into her comms, her voice urgent. The teams spread out, knowing precisely what to do in the coming chaos. As the half-breeds waited for the lights to turn on, an explosion happened. They realized too late that something was wrong, and many of them died. Cheers turned to screams as half-breeds scrambled to escape. The rebellion had begun. Elena watched as the chaos escalated, half-breeds running in all directions, but her focus was clear. The VIPs were crucial to their plan. Well secured but easily manipulated. Marcus, divert the crowd, Elena commanded, pointing toward a group of half-breeds heading toward the exits. He nodded and set off with a few teammates headed to the south, creating a distraction that would lead the VIP half-breed toward the south-marked point. Meanwhile, Lila and Elena coordinated their teams, ensuring the other VIPs were shepherded in the west direction. Keep them moving, we need them to reach the detonation point. As the VIPs try to move to a secure location, Elena decides to trigger a nearby explosive to distract the VIPs, plotting to let them think that the safe area isn't secure at all, so they will move to the following location, which will be Elena's marked detonation point. The tension in the air was noticeable. In the chaos, the half-breeds were falling, and as the VIPs neared the detonation-marked spot, Elena's heart pounded. This was their chance to turn the tide. VIPs on the north is unmarked, Marcus yelled. VIPs on the south is unmarked, another member yelled. Elena said in a serious tone before detonating, I'll count 10, leave the area. After 10 counts, she pressed the trigger. The city erupted in a blinding flash as the explosives detonated simultaneously, sending shockwaves through each area. Chaos erupted and intensified as the half-breeds were looking for a safe location. Elena's heart raced as she and her team surged forward, determined to finish their mission. The VIPs who had survived need to be eradicated. Their oppressive rule must come to an end. They immediately take action to find the surviving VIPs, but as they approach the scene, Elena feels unease at the quietness of the area. Her instincts scream that something is wrong. Hold on, she whispered, raising a hand to signal her team to slow down. Just then, the ambush struck. Shadows leapt from the sides, and the remaining VIPs emerged from the darkness, their faces eerily illuminated by the flickering lights of the destruction around them. They stood there, smug and composed, as chaos unfolded behind them. Among them, Elena's heart dropped as she locked eyes with Jonas. Surprised to see us? He sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. You really thought you could take us out so easily? We've been one step ahead of you this entire time. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. This was a trap. They had been betrayed. Did someone spy on them, or did this guy use his insight ability again? As far as Elena knows, he can only use his ultimate skill, prediction, once every 15 days. He can predict a whole day into the future, and according to the underworld, he has already used it for this month. She was confused but kept calm. What was done was already here. The very people they aimed to eliminate stood unscathed, mocking their efforts. Jonas had played them all along. They lured them into this ambush while the rest of the VIP elite remained untouched. Get back, Elena barked to her team, instinctively shifting into a defensive stance. But the half-breeds closed in, their faces twisted with cruel glee, the chaos behind them a stark contrast to their calm demeanor. Looks like the rebellion isn't as strong as you thought, Jonas taunted, stepping forward with a sinister grin. But don't worry, this will all be over soon. Enjoy the show. My fellow members, it's time to eradicate this abnormal humans who wanted to overthrow us again and again. The battle rages around them. The half-breeds attack fearlessly while the resurgence defends with all their might. She stepped forward, fists clenched, her heart pounding with rage and determination. Jonas, she spat, narrowing her eyes. Descendants of the Heather family? Ha, your ancestors are the scum of humanity. They sold out their kind to become a monster, and that legacy suits you perfectly. Elena looked at him with disdain. Jonas smirked, unfazed by her fury. So naive, Miss Elena, you think you understand the game, but you've only scratched the surface. Our family's alliance with the aliens gives us hope to continue our human legacy. This is what you call innovation. Jonas looked at Elena with pride. He believed his ancestors' decision was correct. Innovation. Have you looked beyond this false paradise? Your ancestors' cowardice is to blame for all of this. You have turned humans into monsters and deprived them of their will, Elena said with a sorrowful expression. She believed that the Heather family orchestrated the betrayal and that humanity's susceptibility to persuasion was also a significant factor. She took some of the blame for having trusted humans too quickly in the past. Are you calling us cowards? Jonas laughed, a chilling sound. Our ancestors can foresee the future while you remain trapped in your delusions of time manipulation. You may think you can play with time, but we can see the outcomes. Things you can't even begin to predict. As my ancestor has said, we already lost the battle. Hey, don't talk big. Your ancestor abilities is a scum for humanities, and this time your insight ability won't be able to save you, she retorted, her voice unwavering. I won't allow you to manipulate humanity's fate again. Elena was determined to eradicate the Heather family. Their insight ability threatened the rebellion's agenda, and she knew they had to be eliminated for Resurgence to thrive in the future. Jonas's expression hardened, the mockery fading. You're so sure of yourself, but you're fighting against the inevitable. Do you think you can change things? I'm the one making the real decisions here, and I won't hesitate to cut you down. Oops. I was supposed to capture you as what my lord instructed, so be good and stay still. Elena stepped closer, her voice low and fierce. A filthy dog of aliens. I'll make sure your Heather family ends here, with you. The air crackled as Elena and Jonas faced off, their powers colliding like thunder. With a swift gesture, Elena uses her skill, Time Lock, to freeze time within a specific range, and the battlefield utters silently. She moved through the suspended chaos, striking Jonas with powerful punches, but the strain began to show. Sweat dripped down her brow as she held time still. Jonas's eyes flickered as she used his insight ability to break time manipulation. In a moment of unforeseen strength, he broke free, the area snapping back to life. Elena uses her ability sparingly because overusing it will seriously strain her core and body. Nice try, Jonas taunted, his smirk widening as he effortlessly dodged her strikes. With fluid grace, he countered, delivering a punishing kick that sent Elena crashing against the wall. Elena gasped from the impact. She sprang back to her feet, fire igniting in her veins. But Jonas's insight sharpened his reflexes. He uses his visualization skill to anticipate her every move, seeing through her attacks like a predator. With each punch she threw, Jonas successfully countered it ruthlessly, pushing her closer to defeat. With her diminishing spiritual energy, Elena can't longer sustain the fight. Elena summoned another skill, Time Crusher, a skill capable of folding time itself, obliterating her opponent. She unleashed a surge of power, making her spiritual energy diminish faster than expected. But Elena landed a solid punch on Jonas's stomach, the force making him gasp in surprise. Elena was about to cut down Jonas when a group of VIPs stormed in, their presence electrifying the atmosphere. They channeled their energy toward Jonas, a brilliant aura enveloping him, amplifying his strength and healing him back to his prime. Elena was disappointed when she realized the tide was shifting. Her chance to crush him had slipped through, leaving her frustrated. The battlefield paused for a moment as everyone was wary of each other. Elena panted hard. Her ability was nearly at its limit, and sweat streamed down her face as she glanced at her teammates, each struggling against the relentless tide of VIPs. Standing tall amidst the chaos, Jonas looked over the battlefield with triumph. You think you can change the outcome now? This is the end for you and your team. You're outnumbered, outclassed. Just accept it. He smirked, a glint of victory in his eyes. Elena focused her remaining spiritual energy, her heart pounding as she sensed her teammates' demise. You all need to go. I'll hold them off, she shouted. Her voice was calm and full of determination. She activated her skill, Time Lock, again, freezing the entire battlefield in a shimmering, crystalline moment. I won't leave you behind, Lila protested, eyes wide with dread. Do it, for humanity, Elena commanded, her voice echoing through the stillness. She has no will to survive, but she will drag her enemy along with her. Reluctantly, they began to retreat, the weight of her sacrifice heavy in the air. As their figures faded into the distance, Elena turned to Jonas, a fierce smile breaking through her exhaustion. You think you've won, don't you? Elena sneered, shadows dancing across her face. But you overlook one crucial detail. Your insight might predict the future. Where in that timeline, I was defeated and miserable. I bet your family might have told you that your Heather ability is my bane as a time manipulator, but they don't know. I am always a variable. I can rewrite the future in an instant, and this one you haven't saw this coming. I'll drag your family with me to hell if I must. I fear nothing, not even death itself. Her eyes glinted with a manic resolve. Jonas's eyes widened in shock, disbelief, and horror. No, you can't. But it was too late. With a final, desperate breath, Elena reached deep into her ability, drawing on the very essence of her core. A rippling energy erupted from her, shaking the foundations of the city. She raised her hand, pointing in the sky, and said with a menacing smile, "Take the final form of my ability, B-starred, black hole." A small black hole formed, swirling with dark energy, consuming everything in its path. As the area around her distorted and crumbled, Elena felt her consciousness slipping. Memories of laughter, camaraderie, and warmth flooded her mind. Her friends, her comrades, the bond they had shared, and the love she had for her husband. Ethan, she whispered, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. I should have told you every day how much I love you. The darkness enveloped her as she reflected on the choices she had made. How did it come to this? She pondered with heavy heart. In those final moments, she surrendered to the void. She knows she had already given everything. For those she loved. Wait for me, my love, she thought as the world faded to black. Elena was awakened by the persistent sound of the alarm. Her head was pounding painfully as she blinked against the morning sunlight. She found herself in her bedroom, surrounded by the familiar decorations that should have felt comforting. Yet, a sense of dread tightened her chest. The last thing she could remember was unleashing her ability to create a small black hole, a desperate move to drag her enemies along with her. Just as she was pulled into the swirling darkness, she collided with something she couldn't comprehend. Now, lying in her bed, she felt confused, as though she had been yanked from one reality and dropped into another without warning. Elena sat up with disorienting thoughts as she comprehended what was going on. She asked herself, was this a dream, or had she been transported back in time? Every attempt to piece together what had happened felt futile. Elena glanced at her hands, then slapped her face. It hurts, she thought. It was so real. She felt happy as she realized she might have a second chance. At what cost? Elena was now conflicted because the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on her shoulders without concrete answers, leaving her torn in a familiar and unsettling room. Elena gazed and wandered around. The sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, casting a soft patterns on the walls. The bed was neatly made, and the room equipment was new. She looked around the wall and found a framed photograph of her and her husband, Ethan, in their wedding attire, capturing moments of a perfect couple. Her eyes landed on the digital display of the alarm clock, and her heart raced at the date flashing back at her. It was already the second week of their marriage. Doubt filled her mind. Had she traveled back 4 months before the start of the apocalypse? Lost in thought, she was interrupted by the buzzing of her phone. Glancing at the screen, she saw a message from her cousin Vivian. Sis, are you going back to the mansion? Suddenly, she remembered that today was her grandfather's will reading. I'll be there, she replied. Her grandfather had 2 sons. One was a sharp-minded businessman destined to take over the Smith Company, while the other, her uncle, was less capable and only received a yearly dividend. After losing her parents in an accident at 6, she was raised by her grandfather, who envisioned her as the company's next leader. She, however, dreamed of painting, not business. As her grandfather's health declined, he grew anxious about his granddaughter's future. Unsure of her readiness to handle the company, he sought a suitable husband and found Ethan. With her grandfather's dying wish hanging over her to be wed into Ethan, she felt trapped in a marriage she didn't choose, leaving her emotionally distant from Ethan. Meanwhile, feeling humiliated by the prospect of her niece's inheritance, her uncle plotted to create discord between her and Ethan, hoping to weaken her resolve and seize control of the Smith Company for himself. He believed it was rightfully his and, indeed, her uncle succeeded. On her wedding day, Elena felt abandoned on what should have been the happiest day of her life. After saying their vows, Ethan, the police chief, was called away on an urgent matter. She stood alone at the reception, heartbroken and disappointed, longing for his presence. In that moment of vulnerability and grief of her grandfather's death, her uncle took advantage of her emotions. He whispered doubts, telling her that Ethan didn't care about her and that only this family was on her side. At the age of 19, she believed him, allowing her uncle's words to cloud her judgment. She felt lost and alone when she went to her grandfather's mansion to hear the will. Her uncle continued to console her, deepening her belief that Ethan had abandoned her. Ethan hadn't shown up for half a month since the urgent call happened, and she began to see him as distant due to her uncle's manipulation. When Ethan finally returned, it was too late. She had already signed the papers, thinking she was giving her uncle the company share for a yearly dividend. Naively, she believed it was a smart move, but she didn't realize it was a transfer of her shares. Her uncle had tricked her, and by the time she discovered the truth, it was too late to reverse the decision. Feeling crushed and betrayed, she looked at what remained: her grandfather's mansion and old antiques. She was in despair but relieved that she finally saw her uncle's true color, and Ethan was there for her, offering comfort instead of blame. Ethan's reassurance and warmth embrace cast a light on her darkest moment. But just as they began to process the fallout between her and her uncle, unexpectedly, the world outside shifted into a series of natural disasters, causing chaos and uncertainty everywhere. Elena pulled back from the wreckage of her past. She took a deep breath and found a new resolve washed over her. She would no longer sit idly by while her uncle plotted against her. If he wants the company so badly, let him have it. For 50 billion, she thought, a wicked smile creeping across her face. She would make him regret every underhanded move he plotted. She would let him bask in the illusion of success while she quietly prepared to hoard a lot of materials. The absurdity of the price she wanted felt like a sweet revenge. She wanted to have all her uncle's money on hand so he would be left unprepared. As the natural disasters unfolded around them, the markets plunged, along with businesses that faltered, and he was left holding the weight of his own greed. "Let's see who laughs last," she whispered, anticipating when her uncle bleeds mentally and emotionally. Elena was about to leave for her grandfather's mansion when she saw a mirror in front of her. She stopped and saw herself. The girl staring back at her was a beautiful woman. She was 5 feet 7 inches tall, with a heart-shaped face and long, lush black hair that spilled over her back and was usually formed in graceful waves. Her smooth, porcelain skin glowed under the warm light, her vibrant green eyes shone with intensity, and her petite frame blossomed into a woman's silhouette. She was stunned. She hadn't seen herself in this look for years. The girl she remembered was buried under layers of scars and injuries, but the person in the mirror was completely new, free of hardships. She burst into laughter, the sound echoing on the walls, and she finally realized that she had returned to the girl she once was, but with the heart of a warrior. "I'm back," she exclaimed, her voice tinted with excitement. The unrest in her past that she had felt a moment ago had vanished along with doubts and fears, which made her ready to regain her life once again. Elena smiled at the mirror, the corners of her lips curled up confidently. Her green eyes narrowed with a sharpness that ignited the surrounding area. It was as if she were seeing the girl she used to be and the fierce woman she had become. After admiring herself, Elena was about to go downstairs when her vision faded, and a wave of confusion flooded her. Before she could gather her thoughts, a sharp pain pierced her head, causing her to gasp. In the blink of an eye, she felt a strange force pulling her, and the familiar surroundings of her bedroom were gone, replaced by a small, mysterious place wrapped in a thick, swirling fog that obscured everything. As Elena wanted to explore the mysterious world around her, a little white dot suddenly zipped through the sky and entered her consciousness. She instantly grasped what had hit her while trapped in the black hole. It was the floating piece of paradise hovering above her while she swirled into the void, and this space was drawn toward her soul. The moment it collided with her, it formed a powerful connection and recognized her as its master. This bond allowed her to return from the past. This white dot also revealed itself as a remnant of an ancient paradise shattered and scattered across different realms due to a devastating war between immortals and demons a billion years ago. This war had left this beautiful space fragmented, floating in the cosmos, and lost. Elena lay unconscious because the mysterious space had transferred too much data into her brain. In the capital of City G, the Heather family was a well-known clan whose name was mentioned everywhere, in both the media and the news. Their patriarch, Jack Heather, was an older man known for his decisiveness. His keen insight and strategic maneuvers led his clan to a prosperous era, but beneath their success lies a great secret. Some members of their clan had an ability to glimpse into the future. One of them is her granddaughter, Trixie, whom he saw as having potential in the future. Although she was often seen as the sweet, innocent heiress, deep down, she had inherited her grandfather's cunning and penchant for manipulation. This family looked honorable, but beneath that facade lies a fierce ambition. They want power and success. On a stormy night, Jack held the phone tightly, his voice crackling as she called her granddaughter. "Trixie, my dear, the time has come. The treasure in the east side of Willow Village in City A will emerge soon, and I need you to scout the area again. I want you to claim it for our family to use." His words dripped with urgency as if each syllable carried the weight of the family's future. Trixie sighed, her patience wearing thin. "Grandfather, I've been here for a week. There's nothing, just trees and shadows. Are you sure about this? Is your insight ability really working well, grandfather?" Her frustration bubbled beneath her polite tone. Jack knew that her granddaughter was running out of patience, so he replies with a soft voice. "Sometimes, Trixie, treasure doesn't reveal itself immediately. It tests our resolve. Trust in what you can't yet see. Remember, the Heather legacy thrives on patience and strategy. We will always be one step ahead of others." His words hung in the air, both an encouragement and a challenge. "I got it, grandfather. I'll wait for the treasure to emerge," Trixie said, her voice steady. "Good," Jack replied, a hint of approval in his voice. Unbeknownst to the Heathers, the treasure they sought had already found a master. In a suburb of the military district of City D, the officers here were operating under a veil of secrecy, especially within the Department of Unnatural Phenomena, DUP. This department primarily specialized in phenomena beyond human understanding. It was headed by two people, General Kaiser, who trained his men to deal with inexplicable phenomena that make no sense to the human brain. In contrast, Brother Elias was an abbot in the local monastery, devoting his life to spiritual guidance and understanding the heavens vision. They are both DUP members with different specializations. but they share the same mission to unravel these mysteries, as they both believe they are critical to maintaining order in an increasingly uncertain world. During the gradual meeting, Brother Elias shared his recent visions. He had glimpsed a future in which the balance of the world was disrupted, and someone was making a move to destroy this world. Brother Elias looked at the senior members of DUP, his voice shaking with fear as he told his recent visions. General, I've been in seclusion for a month trying to glimpse of the future, and what I saw there was terrifying. Natural disasters striking everywhere. The world was filled with darkness. Brother Elias paused briefly, trying to summarize everything, and continued. The world in my dreams was on the brink of collapse. Humans are fighting each other. I believe someone is pulling this chaos, and we should investigate this before it's too late. Kaiser leaned in, his brow knitted in concern. I appreciate your vision, brother, and I do agree that we should look for it as soon as possible, but what exactly are we looking for? I have no idea. The visions only let me see the impending natural disaster. I think the key here is to find out what's causing these troubles. Elias responded quickly, feeling embarrassed. Kaiser nodded thoughtfully and said, Brother Elias, I'll reach out to the higher-ups right now and bring them into this important matter. Let's see if they have some leads that we could start with. Unbeknownst to them, the destruction and chaos will soon begin, leaving them unprepared. After an hour passed, Elena awoke disoriented, her mind filled with information from the mysterious white dot. As the throbbing in her head subsided, she paused to gather her thoughts. The land inside here stretched like an untouched canvas. It's barren, she thought, but alive with the heat of the sun and the gentle caress of the wind. According to the white dot, an immortal used a spell to replicate the sun and wind on the outside. She murmured while remembering the data transfer by the white dot. Despite its emptiness, she felt happy with the potential of the space, as if nature was waiting for her to create her own small world. Each of the 4 separate sections that made up this space provided a different viewpoint on the terrain. A lake beckoned to her to the east, its surface gleaming in the sunlight like glass. The water seemed to pulse with life, promising refreshment and renewal. Elena felt drawn to it, imagining the cool splash against her skin and the soft sounds of ripples dancing across the surface. Water will be her asset during this upcoming natural disaster. On the west side lay fertile land suitable for farming and animal husbandry. Rolling hills and rich soil stretched like a green carpet, ready for her to yield crops and sustain livestock. Elena imagined vibrant fields of grain swaying in the breeze and the animals running in the field. The thought of cultivating the land sparked a sense of hope within her. On the north side, the black soil was suitable for cultivating medicinal plants and herbs. Elena could already see herself stumbling across fields of greenery, collecting ingredients for remedies and potions. Medicine is highly needed during disasters, so this could be a good source of herbs. At last, she noticed a storage inventory on the south side. Anything she put in here would turn stagnant, frozen in time, and never go bad. This meant she could store food, meat, and medicine without fear of loss. In the center lies a golden tablet, a panel that controls everything in the space, and it is only accessible to her. With the help of a golden tablet, she can create unique marks that allow those she trusts to enter and exit her space freely. This mark contains a binding magic that allows her to sense personal motives. It acts as a deterrent against treachery. If they ever consider betrayal or harbor ill intentions, the golden tablet will notify her and create a restriction, making that person feel pain in both the body and soul. In addition, she can decide who can access specific areas of her space, ensuring that the right people enter the right place while safeguarding her treasures. This golden tablet also lets her add her own rules to keep order and protect her sanctuary from outside influences, allowing it to thrive while remaining safe. Elena was really thankful to the Immortals for having this space. This sanctuary is a haven designed to shield her and Ethan against impending disasters. But the Golden Table relies heavily on spiritual power to operate normally. It needs a massive boost of spiritual energy. In her past, this spiritual energy comes from 3 primary sources: relics, especially antiques, radiant jades that harness natural energy, and the crystal cores of half-breeds, mutated beasts, and plants from upcoming disasters. Elena sighed heavily as she stepped out of her space. With the impending disaster looming, she needed to gather a hefty sum for relics and jades, plus essential supplies for the apocalypse like food, machinery, clothing, and medicine. Back in her bedroom, she applied some makeup to give herself a slightly haggard appearance, which served as a visual cue to her supposed misery and vulnerability. Elena devised a strategy to elicit sympathy from her uncle by playing the role of the struggling niece. She chuckled at her reflection, wondering how her uncle would react to her tricks. Once satisfied, she slipped out of the house then drove to the mansion. In the affluent neighborhood of City A, inside the room, Willie and Smith paced back and forth. The irritation on his face was so visible as he waited for his niece to arrive. On his side, his wife, Lorna, lounged on the sofa, her demeanor indicating boredom, while their daughter, Vivian, watched her father's restless movements with increasing frustration. This family, driven by ambition but devoid of genuine talent, had mastered the art of scheming, presenting a polished facade to the world and even fooling Elena's grandfather in the past. Despite the generous inheritance they received from Grandpa Smith, they still wanted to scheme on Elena's fortune. Their greed was truly insatiable. They wanted it all, Elena's inheritance included, so their attempts to manipulate and control her only intensified. William glanced at his daughter, irritation boiling over. "Did you text her about the will reading?" he demanded, his voice tense. "Yes, and she replied she'll be here," Vivian replied, her patience wearing thin. William let out a fierce growl. "Then why is she taking so long? It's been an hour, and everyone is waiting." Mrs. Smith tried to remain calm, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Inside, she simmered with frustration, secretly wishing to confront Elena for making them wait. "Listen, both of you," William said, his tone serious as he looked at his wife and daughter. "The plan is simple. We just need to ensure Elena feels dependent on us so we can manipulate her into signing over those shares." He fixed his gaze on Vivian, his favored daughter. "You're crucial to this. Remember, she thinks of you as her younger sister. Can you come up with a story to turn her against Ethan? We need to make sure they fall out." Vivian rolled her eyes, exasperated. Yeah, I know, you've told us 100 times," she snapped, frustration creeping into her voice. Elena stood at the mansion's gate with a playful grin, thinking of her uncle's sour expressions at her late arrival. As she stepped inside the door, the memories of laughter and heartache flooded back into her mind, as this place reminded her of the bittersweet past. It has been many years since she saw this place again. The last thing she remembered about this place was when the aliens bombarded it, leaving this area desolated. She sighs, lost in thought. She was interrupted by her cousin Vivian, who greeted her with an insincere smile and said, "You're finally here, sis Ellie. I miss you so much." "Lou, Ellie my ass, who's your sister? Stop acting so much," Elena mused, suppressing her irritation. Instead, she replied cheerfully, determined to outmaneuver Vivian in this familiar game of family dynamics. "So glad to see you also, Vivi," Elena chirped, her voice laced with a playful sweetness. She tilted her head, feigning innocence as she scanned the room. "Where's Uncle and Aunt? I can't wait to see them." "They're waiting for you in the living area." "Of course, they're waiting to snatch my shares," Elena thought, rolling her eyes at Vivian's smug grin. "What happened to you? You look a little haggard," Vivian asked. Her words were full of concern, but Elena could sense the underlying thrill in Vivian's eyes as if she savored every moment of her disheveled appearance. "Look at you, at least hide the delight on your face." A smirk tugged at her lips. "It's just that I'm not used to sleeping in a new house." "Don't worry, I'm totally fine," Elena said weakly, forcing a smile. "Let's hurry up. Let's not keep Uncle and Aunt waiting any longer." The family members anxiously waited for her arrival in the cozy living room. As she stepped inside, all eyes turned to her. Her aunt stood up, concern etched on her face, but a cunning spark flickered beneath her facade. She nearly choked at her aunt's performance. Elena turned to her uncle and wondered, what kind of look is that? Her uncle looked at her with a predatory gaze as if she were a tender piece of meat. Grr, she wanted to slap and kick this old man. HMPH. Calm down, Elena. She took a deep breath, trying to keep her sanity intact amidst the chaos in her mind. As Elena watched her aunt come closer to her, past memories surged back into her. Despite the betrayal of being tricked into signing away her shares, she had tried to let go. However, everything changed when natural disasters descended, and her unprepared and desperate uncle showed up at her door. At the time, Ethan was bedridden and vulnerable from injuries on his last mission. After knowing this, her uncle orchestrated a cruel scheme, hiring thugs to rob them and nearly endangering their lives. Fortunately, Ethan's comrade intervened quickly, exposing her uncle's scheme and saving them. She was furious and wanted to take revenge, but her uncle already left the city. She then vowed to cut her uncle out of her life for good. As Elena reminisced about the past, she suddenly felt her aunt's warm hands clasping hers. The gentle touch pulled her back to the present. "Oh, dear, you've suffered so much. Come back and live with us," Mrs. Smith urged, her voice dripping with false concern. "For what? To manipulate me again? No, thanks," Elena murmured to herself. "Auntie, thank you, but I prefer to live with my husband," she said sweetly, a gentle smile on her face as she gracefully walked around the sofa. "Auntie, come sit next to me," Elena said, her tone bright as she subtly adjusted her posture, attempting to conceal the rehearsed flair of her acting skills behind a charming smile. "Okay, dear, Mrs. Smith replied, smiling as she settled beside Elena. despite her niece's haggard appearance. An unexpected lightness in her demeanor puzzled Mrs. Smith. She had expected tears and complaints about Ethan and grief over her grandfather's death. Yet here was Elena, almost serene, leaving Mrs. Smith feeling both uneasy and bewildered. William stared at the opposite sofa, puzzled by his niece's strange behavior. Instead of being sad or upset, Elena was acting cheerful and lighthearted. He remembered how she had shared her worries about Ethan's neglect at the last family gathering. Now, she seemed to be hiding her true feelings. What's going on with her? He thought, sensing something was off. Niece, you're late for 2 hours. Has something happened? William asked, as he masked his frustration and wanted to probe her. I'm sorry, Uncle. I overslept because I've been worrying about my husband. It's been 2 weeks since he's gone, and I'm really concerned. Can we talk later? We need to start reading the will. We've already lost enough time, Elena said, trying to show her vulnerability. And whose fault is this? You're the one wasting our time. William thought grudgingly. Don't worry too much. You know we'll always be here for you, William said, calming himself. Atty, Kai, let's begin the reading. As he spoke, a sly smile crept across his face. His niece did seem genuinely down. Perhaps this was the perfect opportunity for his plan to unfold, he thought, his eyes glimmering with mischief. Atty, Kai stood up, holding the envelope that contained the will. With a steady voice, he began to read aloud. If Elena does not marry Ethan, this will become invalid. Everything I owned, including the property and the company, will be donated to charity. The family will only receive dividends each year. A hush fell over the room as they knew some of the content. This is also why William did not object to Elena's marriage to Ethan, even though he knew Ethan was not easy to deal with. However, if Elena does marry Ethan, all properties, including the houses in the west and east of City A, as well as the antiques and jades, will be divided equally between my granddaughter Elena and my son William. But a special note, this mansion will be handed to Elena alone. William felt that his father was too biased. What could he do? Ah, so frustrating. The company will be handed to his granddaughter Elena, who will receive 60% of the shares, while his son William and granddaughter Vivian will have 10% each. Atty, Kai delivered the news with a heavy tone. William felt a surge of frustration and disbelief wash over him. Despite his hard work and dedication, his father believed Elena was the better choice to lead the business. If Elena knew her uncle's thoughts, she would definitely smock him. What dedication? You only know how to gamble and please others. This left William questioning his role and future in the family legacy, but he calmed himself down. Soon, it will be mine. He smiled slyly and said, of course it should be. Elena is alone and needs financial security. Don't worry, niece. We're family, and we'll help as much as we can. Elena glanced at her uncle, who looked as if he had been robbed, trying hard to hide his frustration. She hadn't noticed it before, but seeing his expression made her feel foolish for trusting him in the past. After Atty, Kai left the mansion, the tension in the room became apparent, but Elena remained unfazed, smiling brightly and oblivious to the change in atmosphere. Her attention was on her aunt and uncle, hoping to catch them off guard with her feigned innocence. Beneath her cheerful exterior, however, was a calculating mind planning her next step. Hey, let's see what they will come up with, smirking as she looked at them. Mrs. Smith leaned forward with a wicked smile and cleverly shifted the conversation to Elena's marriage, feeling that it was an ideal topic. This maneuver would draw Elena out, allowing for a closer relationship with them. My dear, you look quite thin. How have you really been? Mrs. Smith asked, pretending to care. Maybe you should think about moving back into the mansion. Before Elena could answer, his uncle also jabbered. Niece, you really should come back with us, William urged, his voice laced with concern. We want to take care of you. Just look at yourself. You've lost weight and look so stressed after only 2 weeks. Where is Ethan? It seems like he's not taking care of you at all. His words dripped with a subtle hint of manipulation, aiming to plant seeds of doubt in Elena's mind about Ethan's support. Hey, same scheme as before, Elena thought, rolling her eyes. Her uncle always tried to make Ethan look bad. Uncle, aunt, I know you're doing all this for my best, but I can't just leave my newlywed home. Maybe he's just too busy, Elena said as she fixed her gaze on the floor. He hasn't called since he left you at the reception, right? My dear, you should really think about it. Maybe he was reluctant about the marriage. Mrs. Smith said, her voice laced with concern as she leaned closer, her words like a whispering wind trying to drive a wedge between Elena and Ethan. Lou, Elena smirked. If this were the past, she would definitely believe her aunt. Her acting is spot on. maybe she should consider a career in entertainment. It's not like that, Aunt. Please don't say things like that, Elena replied, her voice rising slightly as she tried to act as if defending Ethan. William's frustration grew, and he nearly slapped his niece. Instead, he glanced at his daughter Vivian with annoyance, silently conveying, "It's your turn." Vivian sprang into action, sliding next to Elena with a somber expression. "Sis, this is hard for me to say, but you need to know. Mark and I spotted your husband at a hotel with someone else last week. He was gone for 2 weeks, and now he's back in a hotel? That's seriously shady." Elena fought the urge to kick her cousin, thinking, maybe you should become a storyteller. You're good at it. What do you mean by hotel? He was on a mission, and that was their hideout. And seeing someone else? That was just his male subordinate. She rolled her eyes but feigned shock. "Is this true? How can it be?" Elena exclaimed, her voice trembling as she turned to her uncle, eyes wide with feigned distress and a sad expression. Seeing his niece's genuine shocked face, William realized the time had come. He quickly signaled his wife, readying her for the final touch to their plan. "My dear, don't be sad, Mrs. Smith said gently, her voice soothing like a warm embrace. "If he truly did something immoral, then he doesn't deserve you at all. Perhaps a little vacation would help you escape this stress and find some peace." She smiled, urging Elena to agree as soon as possible. "This bastard," William exclaimed, his voice full of bravado. "I'll have a word with your husband." He puffed out his chest, feigning heroism while secretly plotting how to exploit the situation, ensuring that the truth remained hidden while he protected his interests. Finally, the topic came back to inheritance. "I don't have much time for their antics. Being with them is so tiring," Elena thought, feeling her patience wear thin from their scheme. "Aunt, uncle, I can't. I have responsibilities in the company. If I go on vacation, who will replace me?" Elena said desperately, tears streaming down her cheeks. William finally smiled genuinely at his niece and said, "Niece, don't worry. I will take good care of the company. But I'm afraid they won't listen to me." His expression softened as he plotted a way to position himself as the new leader of the company. Elena recognized her uncle's impatience and blatant ambition, pretending to be oblivious to his true intentions while showering him with gratitude. "Uncle, you're so good to me. I'll gladly write a resolution, making you the new leader. My professor is going to Country D for an exhibition. I want to follow her and pursue my dream of becoming a painter. Unfortunately, I need a lot of money for the exhibition and to buy an antique painting she wants. I'd really love to be her disciple." Elena masked her true intentions with a facade of gratitude, hoping he'd buy her story. "Well, she's not lying, though. She will go to Country D to buy a lot of materials, and she badly needs money." William was stunned by her niece's enthusiasm, oblivious to the facade behind it. Thrilled about becoming the new chairman of Smith Company, he quickly said, "Niece, that's good, you should pursue your dream. How much money do you want?" Elena was ecstatic. "More or less 50 billion, with a playful glint in her eye. Let's see if they're willing to accept that offer for the position they want." Mrs. Smith was taken aback by the enormous amount of money she needed. With wide eyes open, she exclaimed, "My dear, that's a staggering amount. What kind of antique do you plan to buy? Perhaps your grandfather has something your professor would want?" She raised an eyebrow, intrigued and skeptical about Elena's grand ambitions. Elena rolled her eyes internally. "Do you think 50 billion is a lot for Smith Company? If selling it weren't so demanding and time-consuming, I wouldn't be here talking to you." Stifling the urge to snap. "It's a famous painting from a historical period. My professor is obsessed with it. She even travels monthly to see it," Elena explained, her voice laced with urgency. "I guess I'll have to work harder because a vacation isn't an option right now." She smiled wryly, subtly hinting to her uncle that his next move could make all the difference. William shot a disapproving glance at his wife, the words "what do you know" hanging unspoken in the air. Turning to his niece, he said, "You need to prioritize your health. The stress isn't good for you. How about you lend us your share? I'll give you 50 billion upfront and dividends yearly. That way, you can focus on your dream of becoming a famous painter." "I'll listen to you, uncle." Elena agreed easily. Vivian watched Elena agree so quickly, glancing at her father, who seemed to have orchestrated everything flawlessly. A fleeting doubt crossed her mind. Something felt off, but it was quickly overshadowed by excitement. "Finally, I'll become the true heiress of the Smith Company," her heart racing with the promise of power and opportunity. The thrill of her future overshadowed any lingering concerns. "Good. Do you have time next week to sign the papers?" William asked. Actually, he longed to finalize everything today, but the thought of the company lawyer's disapproving glare held him back. Better to wait and avoid a lecture. Convincing himself that patience was a virtue and added, "Let's make sure everything is in order." "Okay, uncle, just call me anytime. I'll be available around." She needed that money ASAP to kickstart her plan for stocking materials for her space. Waiting felt like a missed opportunity to transform her vision into reality. I couldn't afford any delays, mentally calculating the costs of supplies she needed to secure before the apocalypse began. Since it's finalized, let's have dinner before leaving, William said, a grin spreading across his face. He looked at his niece and couldn't help but smirk. She's so naive, he thought, relishing the way everything was going according to his plan. Elena glanced at her uncle's smug face, trying not to laugh. You think you've outsmarted me, huh? Her eyes sparkling with mischief. You must wait for the apocalypse to hit. Your bank account will be worthless. Oh, and the antique? Maybe I'll steal it myself. She smiled happily as she plotted her next move. After dinner, she hastily went home, planned her 3-month routine before the apocalypse, and listed all that needed to be bought.